Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the New School Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Carswell, joined by our co-host and founder of CuriosityLab.AI, Boon Chu. Today we have Jake Aronskind with us. Very much looking forward to this conversation. So just to go ahead and dive right in, Jake, could you tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about your background and your story?
Sure, guys. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored. My name is Jake Aronskind. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Pepper. I run a recipe sharing platform, so a place for friends and family to share what they're cooking in their kitchen. We're a community of 1 million home cooks worldwide.
I love that. I'm thinking about dinner already. Boon, how did you and Jake first get connected?
Well, I think we went way back a couple years ago. I don't even know exactly which year, but Jake, I think he reached out to me and then we spoke. And then, my venture studio, Apollo, ended up helping Jake work on his Pepper, the awesome project he mentioned just now, his company. And the rest is history.
Yeah, and so Jake, Boon only brings guests to our show when he sees that there's a clear or a potential overlap between what we're doing with the New School Podcast, with CuriosityLab.AI, and what you guys have now built. And it sounds like continue to scale, which is exciting. So maybe Boon, we'll start with you and then go over to Jake. Like, what do you feel like is the one thing about Pepper that you could see kind of evolving into CuriosityLab.AI?
I really want him to share his journey, his experience with the audience, and maybe even get his take on where he sees the education play, or how he's, the role of education in his startup journey, whether he wished that he could have started, sooner, or that sort of stuff. I'm actually curious to learn from Jake. But, I think his experience, as a special startup founder and then growing into a success, and his journey and what he learned from that journey, I'm actually curious about that.
Yeah, Jake. Well, I guess before you go, I'm curious now, how old are you?
I'm 27 now. I've been building Pepper, and I first met Boon when I was 23.
Wow, there you go. Okay.
I know. Boon basically raised me at this point.
Dude, that's not typical, right? Which is clearly, it's becoming more evident why Boon wanted us to bring you on today. So yeah, talk to us about that gap. What happened for you in your life between that gap of graduating college or university and launching Pepper?
This is really the story of how Boon and I were really love at first sight. I graduated. I had studied economics and computer science. I kind of ran with that combination, started working as a prop trader upon graduation. After graduation, I worked at a firm called Trillium, where I did day trading. So I traded US stocks. Just before it became cool and everyone started doing that on Robinhood, I was doing that for a profession. And 6 months into the pandemic started, went home, was cooking a lot with my family, and wanted a place to share what I was up to. And a childhood best friend of mine, my at the time soon to be co-founder Matt, and I had this idea of really just getting a community where we can share what we're making. There exists one for Strava, which is a running community. There exists one for a movie community in Letterboxd and Q, for the hiking community at large on all trails. But nothing really existed for recipe sharing and supporting the at-home everyday home cook. I didn't know where to start to create it. And I remember I sent out a ton of emails and inquiries of just anyone who would listen. And funny enough, I remember someone said to me, take note of who's the first person to respond. And Boon happened to be the first person to respond. And not only did he respond to that email, but he responded to quite a few after that. And now, 4 years later, we still work together. So it's been an incredible journey. I think that it's so easy to jump into hands that will lead to technical debt. And I'm so fortunate that Boon's was completely the opposite, because frankly, you got to just trust your gut in this business. And there's no data that's going to tell you, to trust someone. But if you have a good gut, oftentimes you can get farther in this founder experience. And my gut told me that Boon knew what he was doing, and clearly he did.
I've gotten the same impression working with Boon so far, and thank you, Jake. That's an indirect testimony to what is being built with CuriosityLab.AI right now, which is the brainchild of Boon. But to go back to your path here too, there's a lot of youth out there that think to get to your level of success, they do have to go to school for 4 years and do all these things. You kind of skipped that, but is there anything you feel in your educational experience that you didn't even need in the first place?
I would say that I don't think you actually need any of it, at least the academic side. I don't think that anything you learn, for the most part, is typically going to be applicable in a real job. Most jobs are just going to teach you things on the spot, just like mine, being a founder founder. But I think what college does is it definitely introduces you to, first of all, your network at the beginning of it. An analogy that people make when you're building a company is that it's like taking a plane and flying it off a cliff. And they say that for first-time founders, you build the plane on the way down. You know, I've sat with this for a while, and ultimately the way that I kind of perceive that is building the plane. The plane itself is like your network and your experience. And so like most startups are destined to fail, which is, you know, like flying a plane off a cliff. But at least you have the physical plane and the fact that you know people know you. You can get investors, you can get engineers, you can hire people. We have to do all of that and try to figure out how to make a company successful, which already is not supposed to work. So I think that what college does is it starts to give you, you know, maybe a wrench and a couple bolts to get started on that plane. And then on top of it, I also think it teaches you how you work. So like I work very differently than I'm sure you, Adam, or you, Boon, or anyone else listening. And that's okay. But you kind of got to figure out what's best for you, what's your best learning style, what's going to make you succeed better than the next person.
So Jake, question for you is that in that few years of you running Pepper, I'm sure it's been a roller coaster ride for you. And through that, you must gain something such as mental strength, toughness, like the things that you gain from running Pepper, especially things like the character side, the mental strength side. Can you kind of describe that? Because I feel like in the AI world, the character skills is gonna, you know, it's a big part now because now, you know, you have easy access to knowledge, but the character skills is something that people can really focus on building. So I'm curious about what did you learn about yourself through that whole process of running? Because I'm sure there'll be times where you have to face, you know, failures and mistakes and stuff like that. So how did you grow out of that? Was it easy for you? Did you learn to, say, behave a certain way over time? Just curious about that aspect of it.
I think I still sometimes find myself in the honeymoon stage of building a company, but I would say kind of just taking everything in stride, right? Like the highs can be so high, like, you know, getting 10,000 downloads, like making revenue, going on a Gordon Ramsay show, like all those things are super, super fun. But there's so many more daily lows, but at least you're having fun doing it for yourself. So I think kind of, you know, what I've tried to do is like soften both, where like when we have a win, like I enjoy it, but I also know that, you know, we got to build on that momentum. And then when you have a loss, and they come usually a lot more than the wins, you really try to just like not let it take the wind out of your sails. I think it's really easy to like get an email or like go into due diligence with an investor and be like, oh my God, like, dude, this is going to change the whole company. And I think you really got to just understand it's a marathon. So like an email is not going to change things. And as long as you can kind of like soften the blows on the upside and downside and just keep the thing moving forward, like just pure grit is going to get you a lot farther.
That part, I think a lot of people don't necessarily are born with. Like what would you say? Because I know running a startup, there's a lot of unknown you have to deal with. So your ability to deal with unknown, what do you think that comes from your personal sort of character, or is it something that you have to learn?
I do think there are some characteristics that you need as a founder, like I mentioned, having a good gut. I also think to be able to carve a vision of something that doesn't exist and be able to take a high level approach about like how are you going to build that, and then every single day you take an in the weeds approach and you're like, what do I need to do to continue to push forward towards that vision? And in the beginning, it's a lot of just like legal hurdles to just get up and running, and then sooner or later you start to get to the point where like you can make roadmap decisions looking further out. That's not to say that, you know, I've planned the next 12 months, but I have a general idea and I know what the next 3 months entails. But just being comfortable with that unknown, I think is a game changer.
Kind of envisioning the future of CuriosityLab.AI right now. And as we gather students that are, say, between the ages of 12 and 18, how would you best prepare someone at that age to go and really do what you did, Jake, like launch their own app?
You find someone like Boon who has unbelievable talent. If Boon is not available in this situation, I mean, I'm seeing increasingly younger founders pop up. So I would first, you know, and foremost, do as much as you can possibly do alone. Like what is the least thing that you can show that you can do yourself to validate? And if you can do that, anyone that you're going to work with is going to be a lot more inclined to work with you, whether it's engineers, whether it's investors, whether it's partners, whether it's accelerators. Anyone wants to see any semblance of a self-starter because that's oftentimes going to characterize like future success.
Yeah, something that can't be coached. And I do think that if you can master something at the simplicity level, then you don't want to start complex, right? You want the foundation to be as simple as possible. So being able to do it yourself. Could you give like maybe I guess whether it's with Pepper or just a fictional idea, could you give an example of what that would look like if someone was going to do it themselves, building an app?
Yeah, I'll give an example for Pepper. On a high level, my team and I decided Pepper is something that we'd like to do. What is Pepper? It is a community where you share what you're cooking, right? Today, it's 1 million registered users, 100,000 shared recipes. You have the ability to build a cookbook. You can have collections of recipes you want to make. We have a partnership with Instacart where you can shop those. There's a million things you could do. We're coming out with a whole video game in Pepper right now. That obviously took years to do, and we had time to validate it. What would be a skinned down version of that? A Facebook group. A Facebook group is a community that has very low barriers to entry, that people can post a picture with what they're up to, and you can see, do people like it? And that's what we did. We built a community called Pepper, and we just posted pictures of what we were cooking. We saw if people responded. And when people started responding, I was like, okay, this is interesting. Got on with Boon. Boon and I came up with the first version. That was very, very simple. Just uploading a picture with a couple tags and a feed and an explore and a profile. We had a very little upside in terms of the utility that we offered from a cooking perspective. But it's all just it's an iterative game. And, we never raised millions of dollars, especially all at once. And so we had to just basically get to certain benchmarks. And each time we hit a new benchmark, we'd sit around, we'd say, all right, this looks pretty good, ship it. More money would come in, and we'd be able to go and get to the next benchmark. So it's really all about just whittling down what your value prop is and then testing it in its most basic form.
So Jake, when you have the MVP and you have to go grow Pepper, a lot of the sort of strategy or the user acquisition things that you do, are they from things that you read about, or you just trying to figure out your mental framework there? Do you come up with just different things to try? Do you have a specific process that you follow? Or do you just try to be creative and see where you can get more users? I want the audience to really learn from not so much what you do, but the way you think and come up with ways to do the things that you do.
Yeah, it's really well put. It took us a long time to understand that it's more important to have a way to test things than to actually come up with things. Anyone can come up with ideas, but you need a mechanism in place to measure the success of it. I am now of the belief that 99% of us, our guts are going to be wrong until we reshape them to be right. And when it comes to your chosen industry. And so we had to finally acknowledge we have no idea what we're doing. We have no idea what stimulates consumer behavior, because you'd be shocked at what consumers actually respond to. I could be telling you with my words, I want this, but I actually don't, and I want something else. And you only learn that in data. We say something here of we like to chase the truth. The only way you can do that is just to be honest with yourself and what the data is telling you. If the data says that your new paywall sucks, which happened to us, change it back. If it says this one's really good, keep leaning into it. So the most important thing you can have at a company is an ability to measure the success of what you just did. Then I will also say that's how you should be building a company every single time, especially with consumers, because consumers, there's plenty of them. There's enough data that it's material and you can, actually judge the impact. If you're running a SaaS business, you have 3 customers, it's going to be a little more difficult. I will say in our next chapter, it is based on 0 data, our gamification. There is nothing in the app that tells me this is what people want, other than the fact that I'm looking at other apps and reading between the lines and carving our own path. But at this point, I think I've reshaped my gut enough that I personally think it's the best possible thing for this company. It's like writing or speech making. You have to learn the English language and the rules enough so that you can break them. And I'm breaking them right now more than I ever have.
That's awesome.
I like the phraseology, reshaping your gut. I don't know if we could make that a course, Boon, reshaping your gut 101. What are some basic, just daily practices you think people can do to help reshape their gut?
You just gotta take yourself off a pedestal and be every time I pitch something, I find myself saying okay, keep in mind, I don't know anything, but, and I think just to kind of have that, first of all, it takes away all expectations, right? You can just talk transparently and say the stupidest things, and oftentimes somewhere near the stupidest things is actually the right ones. But I would say that just, constantly looking at your data, every morning, the first web page I open, it's not my email, it's our revenue cat dashboard, which tells us our subscriptions. I look at our new subscriptions, I look at our active trials, and then I go to our conversion rates and I go, okay, how are we trending? What's new? The next thing I do is I go to our amplitude, which is where all of our more detailed data is. And I go, okay, how are people posting and how are people being converted based on our ceilings, which is our premium paywall like nudges. I'm looking at what I feel are like the core pieces of our app and seeing where people are ending up without sitting down and thinking up a single piece of creativity. I'm like strictly just trying to focus on what the data is telling me. And then I start to look at like product updates that need to happen, which are like bugs or whatever. And then on Fridays typically is when I start to do my like really exploratory designs. And that's when you can let yourself go. And all you can do is like you place chips and say, hey, this is based on every piece of data I'm thinking. This is what I'm gonna do. And for the next 3 weeks, I'm gonna test it. And if my conversions aren't going up, then I was wrong. But at least I have a system in place to measure it.
I'm sure, there's a lot of satisfaction in creating something like Pepper. But a lot of people may have more than one passion, right? Like other than from cooking, they might have a bunch of other things that they want to do as well. And given the fact that you've been at it for quite a few years now, I mean, were there times when you get up and say, hey, I wish I'm doing something different, or that after some time that you want to chase something different? So I'm trying to figure out from your standpoint, like how do you keep at it, and how do you know when to pursue something different? Because I often see that sometimes, especially with founders that are really good at coming up with ideas, they like to chase new ideas as new things come out. So trying to understand from your standpoint, I'm sure that you have more than one passion than just cooking. How do you stick to that? How do you keep going at it? How do you get yourself out of the bed like every day feeling as excited as one? Yeah.
I think it just comes with, it's like being in a relationship. Like you got to just find your excitement and find new ways to feel that excitement. And so, just looking inwards for me personally, you got to do things that excite you. So like I knew I've been excited about this gamification for years now, but the product was not prepared for it. And frankly, like me as a designer was definitely not prepared for it. And maybe I'm still not, but I'm going to try. I'm so excited about that every day I just look forward to the second that I can have it in my hand and keep iterating on it. Even if it's late at night, like I'll be using other games and just playing with it and seeing like, okay, how does this make me feel? Why does it make me feel? Why is this making me want to pay? And then I also think it's the relationship that you have with your colleagues. Like, my co-founder is one of my best childhood friends. And sometimes like I'm in a funk and I need to pick me up. Sometimes he's in a funk and he needs to pick me up. And there's two people in a relationship. And for us, there is two people. Like, there are more. We have a couple other employees, but for the most part, like that's your co-founder and you need to be able to rile each other up. And so he is cranking right now, making unbelievable deals left and right, which is really nice because it allows me to sit and like obsess in my dark room over product and just build something that I hope to be unbelievable. And there are other times when I'm rolling and I'm making deals. It really all is just like someone's got to keep picking the team up and keep it moving forward. And you both got to just know that, you're working as hard as you possibly can to find new exciting ways to keep the business going.
Cool. So one last question is, do you have to optimize your sort of morning routine in order to run the startup? I'm curious because I always talk about how founders themselves have to optimize themselves in order to be successful at what they do, because otherwise you get mental health stress and all kinds of things can come at you and you're not like physically prepared for that. So I'm curious from your standpoint, did you have to make any change after you started Pepper from a personal standpoint, health standpoint? Do you have to optimize your morning routine to get yourself ready for the day?
Yeah, I think morning routine's everything and nightly routine. If the middle of the day is never going to be the same if you're a founder. Like you literally have no idea what's going to be emailed to you, good or bad, but you can deal with the beginning and the end of the day. So every morning I make my bed, which I think is a very, very important part of everyone's day because it takes literally 15 seconds. And it's like the shortest win that you could possibly have. I'm very into like giving myself really easy tasks because that then makes me feel good. It makes me want to do bigger tasks. So like I have like notes on everything I want to do for the day and I can just cross them out. Some will literally be like, add this to your calendar or like text Adam or something. Really, really easy tasks. And making your bed is the first one every day. Then I like to go to the gym in the morning. Now, that's also a product of the fact that I surrounded myself with people that want to do that. Matt, my co-founder, had been doing that for years. And then my other roommate, Paulie, had been doing that for years. And it pushed me to do that not just a couple times a week, but doing it now 4 times a week. I go to the gym for an hour and a half. Then I go in the steam room, I shower, I come home, feel good, have my coffee, have a couple soft-boiled eggs with a little bit of truffle salt, and I'm ready to go. I usually get home around like 8:30, and I really like to keep the mornings to myself. I don't like to have meetings then. I like to like catch up on all of my work. And then usually starting around 11-ish, I start to get into calls. Lately, I haven't had as many. Before that, I would have 5 or 6 a day. So it really just depends. And then at night, in a perfect world, and frankly, this has not been the case very often just because there's a lot of things of that work that take my nights away. But in a perfect perfect world, I can be in bed by like 9 and read and go to bed before 10. I'm like, and I'm feeling great. So I think the routine is a super, super important part, especially the latter, like your nightly routine, going to bed early, getting a lot of sleep. Studies have shown that is like the single greatest thing you could do. I always am trying to get 8 hours of sleep. Like I'm very cognizant of that. I don't get it all the time, but I do think about it.
Yeah, Boone and I'm sure we can relate given we have kids as well, right? You that 8 hours, if you can get that 8, that's great. But Jake, that first of all, great routine. Boone, we're gonna have to get some Curiosity Lab truffle salt or something, is what I'm thinking. And that's how you know you're working with someone who's they're building a cooking app. So Jake, so many golden nuggets dropped this past 30 minutes. Thank you so much for investing your most valuable resource with us here today, your time. I'm sure Boone and I will also just be in touch in general now that we've had you on here, man. So again, just thank you so much. And yeah, any parting words of wisdom for our audience today?
Well, Adam and Boone, thank you both so much for having me. I think if you got anything out of what I've said, I think it's really just like get started. Like, there's no situation unless you pour your life savings into a company that goes bankrupt in the first 6 months. Like other than that scenario, like there's no scenario where you're worse off having started. So if you can dedicate your time, like that time will always be worth it.
There you go, folks. Jake, you know what? What is the best way our listeners and viewers can follow up and get in touch with you? I'm sure downloading the app would be nice. Give us your call to action, sir.
That would be super nice. Please download our app, Pepper, in iOS and Android stores. And if you send me an email dropping Boone or Adam or CuriosityLabs.AI, I can toss you 3 extra months of Pepper Plus free.
Awesome.
Let's go. Hey, Raymond, make sure we get that one in the show notes and all that content.
I thought the recording ended just before I said that.
All right, Thanks, everyone. Yeah, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the New School Podcast, where we live by one motto: out with the old, in with the new. I'm your host, Adam Carswell, joined by our co-founder of our founder of CuriosityLab.AI and our co-host of the show, Boon Chu. We had Jake Aronskind of Pepper joining us here today. Go download his app. You guys rock, and we will catch you in the next episode.